the biggest thing that we're trying to help people understand is that, things like work engagement, psychological safety, performance, these really big things that appear to be in separate buckets. It's like, oh, okay, we got to focus on psychological safety, or we got to focus on achieving goals. They're all related. And it's really great news for leaders, because if we can focus on the things we need to know, the things we know we need to do, but in a very specific data-driven way, we can help teams align, help them collaborate, help people grow, and we've shown that you'll achieve more goals.
We have the pleasure of welcoming Jeff Smith today to our interview series. I'm Sumita Mariam from the peopleHum team. Before we begin, just a quick introduction of peopleHum. peopleHum is an end-to-end one-view integrated human capital management automation platform, the winner of the 2019 Global Cody Award for HCM that is specifically built for crafted employee experiences and the future of work. We run the peopleHum blog and video channel, which receives upwards of 200,000 visitors a year, and publish around 2 interviews with well-known names globally every month. And now for our guest. Jeff Smith is the founder and CEO of Supporting Lines Institute. He's over 20 years of experience, and his interests include sales, finance, people and culture, and operations. With a passion for improving the human experience at work, he's also passionate about helping leaders solve the most asked questions. As a result of helping companies and non-profit organizations achieve tremendous growth, he received Business in Vancouver's 40 Under 40 Award in 2011. We are extremely happy and excited to have someone of his stature on our interview series today. Welcome, Jeff. We are thrilled to have you.
Thank you. It's my pleasure to be here.
Thank you so much. So the first question I had for you, Jeff, was, can you tell us a little bit about your journey and your interesting work with Supporting Lines Institute?
Sure, I can give you the short version of a much longer story. But my resume definitely has been something that is not as common in the past, but I think it is becoming more common today. Mm-hmm. I've spent a lot of time over my career following great leaders, also trying to put myself in positions where I often was learning so much new, so many new things when I started out in my role that sometimes I wondered as I got the role if I'd made the right decision. But I always took jumps that really stretched me, and some of them were lateral. They weren't necessarily even, the sort of the straight career path up. So my background, I'm a CPA, so chartered professional accountant. I went into the finance world first, and then gradually found my way through financial planning and analysis into supporting partner operations teams, and then ultimately getting into sales. From sales, I went back into finance, and after a period of time there, I actually ran a $1 billion sales organization for a company called CHC Helicopters. And in the span of 4 years, the team increased revenue across the global organization from 800 million to 1.6 billion in about 4 years. So it was crazy growth. After my role got moved to Texas, and I wanted to stay in Vancouver, I actually went back into finance. So I became a CFO, then gradually moved towards COO. And in that work, I really got into the people and culture side. That was where I really started to get much deeper into that. And I realized that, unfortunately, I had spent a lot of my career that I thought I was a great leader as a very strong manager, and I had lots to learn about leadership. And so that's really been my journey the past 3 or 4 years, is how can I be a better leader? How can I help other people be a better leader? That's led me to executive coaching, and of course, starting Supporting Lines, which I'll talk about in a second. And this week, this would be the first place we announced it. I was actually given a designation called Master Corporate Executive Coach from the Miko Institute. So that was that was very, it was a big honor. Yeah, thank you. It's a very big honor, and it validates a lot of the work we're doing. So as you mentioned, Supporting Lines is a company that I started last year. Some of the material that we've been using has been around for up to 4 years, and some of the concepts I've used as far back as 12 years ago. So we focus on helping leaders and teams perform. And we do that not just for achieving goals, but as you mentioned, we also are really focused on the human experience of work. And we're also data-driven, so everything has to be measured. And so the human experience of work really has 2 parts. One is work engagement, which relates to a positive, fulfilling state of mind in your work. And the other one is around psychological safety. So we're currently doing research around how our assessments interrelate with psychological safety. And it's actually incredible the degree to which performance assessments actually connect with psychological safety. So, I have integrity, I'm treated with respect, I've got autonomy, I'm treated fairly. So it's been really quite a journey. I mean, there's things that we knew to be true, And now that we're actually doing some of the research and seeing the data come back as strong as it is, it's really amazing to learn about what performance really is and how it impacts the human experience. It's been a great journey, and I in some ways feel like we're just getting started.
That's an amazing journey, and that's a great story to, to be able to tell someone that I've gone through all of this. So I just, noticed a word, psychological safety. Can you elaborate a little bit about that?
Sure. So when we did our original study last year to validate our first assessment, it's called the High Performance Index. And so that started out as a sales tool. I had this huge framework and I was trying to sell it, and I found it was just way too much to explain. So I made 32 questions that were originally supposed to be a sales tool. And then we partnered with Adler University. So they had a master's student in industrial and organizational psychology that did a validation exercise where we looked at our performance related questions. So we look at how leaders help teams align, collaborate, and how they help people grow. Those are measures of performance, but as you can see, they would also relate to some of these other things. What we didn't see coming was originally the research thesis I gave them was, I just want to make sure these questions don't suck. Like that was literally what I asked them to look at. And so it turns out they didn't. And in fact, our questions predicted work engagement. And so I felt like having a positive, fulfilling state of mind in your work, which is how the Utrecht work engagement scale that we use, that felt like the right definition of engagement, but it's only part of the experience, right? I really like my job as one part, but how am I treated is the other. And so there's an organization called Guarding Minds. It's called Guarding Minds at Work. They do amazing work, and they've got a whole bunch of resources that are online for free. And they actually, so the people that created that also helped create a Canadian standard for mental health, psychological safety in the workplace. And so while psychological safety is this, for many leaders, it's a very scary term. They're like, whoa, that sounds like mental health. Whoa, that, it kind of freaks them out a little bit. What we found is that when you get into what psychological safety actually is, it really is just good leadership. So it's treating people with respect. It's treating people in a way that they know they're trusted. They have autonomy. They get the opportunity to be involved in creating the work that they're going to chase, the goals they're going to chase, the work they're going to do, and also they create their how. So it's not somebody telling you, here's what we need to do and here's exactly how you should do it. It's more around giving people space so they can co-create the actions. And then having freedom to kind of, go for it, try some things and not being afraid that on the other side, there's going to be reprimands and other things. So the deeper I got into it, I'm actually learning a lot as well. And the way I help people understand it is that mental health is around our sense of emotional and psychological well-being. Psychological safety is really the things we do to create environments where we protect that at work and we're not causing people to have, further deterioration. So it's really important. And we felt like if we could show correlation with that, and the correlations, the research is ongoing, so maybe we can do another thing where I come back and share the research with you. But the initial returns on the data, the results are staggering. So we can see that our questions on alignment, collaboration, and growth are already predictive of work engagement and now incredibly tied to psychological safety. And we feel like those two things together really give us a data-driven way to look at the human experience rather than this kind of ephemeral, whimsical notion of like, oh, it's just really nice to work here. Like we want to have something that is, we can really put our foot against it so that when we're working with our clients, they have something that they can move and demonstrate that it's improved instead of just, wondering, did we make a difference?
Yeah, that's a wonderful answer. And you have a lot of, unique takes and really beautiful takes on leadership. So can you elaborate a little bit about leaders are supporting lines and not reporting lines?
A lot of this stuff is like totally accidental. Like the way this journey's kind of come together. I used that line the first time about 2010, this whole concept of reporting lines, versus supporting lines. And it was in the context of trying to support customers while I was at CHC Helicopter. So we were, it's very challenging when you're doing work for oil field services companies around the world and setting up helicopter operations, especially in, developing countries and things. It's really challenging. So everybody has to be aligned. And any cross-functional work, by definition, requires people across different reporting silos to work together. Yeah. And so where the term came from was nobody in one function. We could have 40 people or even 100 people involved in deploying these different programs. And so there's no one function. Like nobody in just finance or just in helicopter operations or just in supply chain could deliver the whole thing. We needed to work together. And so I believe there was some colorful language used in the meeting where I said, we need to stop looking at our reporting lines and start looking at supporting lines. We've got to start from the customer and a successful deployment, and then map out all the things that have to happen to make that possible. And so as we got into things, as my career progressed and I got to Mobilify, which is a software company here in Vancouver, we did a lot of things around goal setting. And specifically, I find a lot of times goal setting ends when it really should begin. So think about the last goal setting process you were in, probably define some outcomes, strategic objectives. You had some, key results or performance measures, and then that's it. There's our plan. What we do is we actually map out what we call supporting lines, where we get commitments. So if you and I are on different teams, but we're on a common goal, and you need my support, we actually formally iron that out in the planning process, and we call that a supporting line. So the supporting line is really these commitments across cross-functional boundaries. And if you think about it, they're actually more important than reporting lines when it comes to doing our work. So in the context of supporting lines, we see two different types of supporting lines, both of which I think are more important than the org chart reporting lines. The first one is teams supporting each other. That's one type of supporting line. And the other one is if you think about, are you familiar with the concept of servant leadership?
No.
Okay, so there's a foundational paper on this written in the 70s by somebody named Robert Greenleaf. Mm-hmm. And what they talk about is the best of a leader. If you're if you're a leader, it's your job to support the team, and not the other way around. It's not, people don't report to you, you need to support them. And I think that's the difference as a light went on for me, and that's when I realized that, these supporting lines are more important. And as I gravitated toward that, I felt like I became a much better leader. Whereas before, I think I was a really good manager. I was good at getting people motivated and we could achieve goals, but to me, that's management. It's actually not leadership. I was disappointed to learn that.
So you've already covered a lot of points regarding my next question, but can you elaborate a little bit on how a leader can engage his or her team to attain organizational goals along with their personal goals?
So this is an amazing question, and I think it's been one of the biggest epiphanies for me on this journey. So I spent my whole career thinking that if I can engage my team, we'll get performance. If I can drive engagement, we'll get performance. And as we've seen from a lot of major engagement surveys and things, I'm not aware of another product where we've spent billions and billions and billions of dollars and made almost zero progress. Right? When you look at some of these global surveys, the global engagement in the global not in leaps and bounds. So I was wondering if, when I go back to CHC, if we were having trouble moving, trying to move forward with engagement and we were unable to do it. I mean, this is a company that grew from 800 million to 1.6 billion in 4 years. So these same people should be able to do this too. And we struggle with it, like a lot of other companies. And so that led me to start questioning, what is engagement? I don't think we're measuring the right things. And it turns out that that's right. So rather than engagement driving performance, what we proved last year in our data is that it's the other way around. And I think psychological safety has elements that are the same thing. If we focus on performance, so alignment and collaboration to achieve goals, and then helping people grow to be effective leaders, that actually produces engagement. So it's the other way around. Engagement is like an end thing, when a lot of times we've been focused on that as the thing that would drive performance forward. It doesn't seem to be true. There's no data anywhere that I'm aware of that shows that if we drive engagement, we then get performance. There was some data that showed that if we drive performance, we get engagement, but ours showed that that's off the charts. The way we ask the questions, it was off the charts. And so I think the biggest thing with engagement, if you look at a lot of major surveys, I think that a lot of the legacy research out there they're not measuring the things that really are engagement. So if you think about measuring things very commonly in engagement surveys, you measure things like, I'm likely to work harder here, right? I'm going to give more discretionary effort. I'm likely to stay. When you wake up in the morning, do you want to feel oh, I'm so focused on my retention today, or I'm feeling super discretionary? Or do you want to wake up in the morning and be more I feel like going to work. I have a positive, fulfilling state of mind. Engagement is an emotion. It's a feeling.
Yeah.
Most of the surveys that measure it, especially some of the leading ones, I think they're measuring the benefits of engagement, not engagement itself. And I think that's why we're not moving it. Because I think engagement isn't, you have a great experience at work. so that the company makes a whole bunch of money. Like, that's not what it is. It's really just about your experience. And so I think that's the difference. And so in terms of how people can, I was surprised by this. So I was never trying to be like an academic. I never intended to have an assessment. I just had like a sales tool and wanted to know that it didn't suck. Like, this is where this started. And so now we have a 32 question survey, and we have a free version of it on site. So there's a leader evaluation that somebody can take, and they can assess very quickly how they can improve alignment, collaboration, how they can help their team, how the people on their team grow. And if they do those things, they will produce performance. They'll also produce engagement. And so the leader evaluation on our site takes 10 minutes to fill it out or less, and we debrief it for free. And what we found is that when leaders fill out their own self-assessment of what they think their team would say, they'll definitely identify things that are roadblocks and obstacles. And you just start working on one or two things. I mean, that's the other thing with engagement surveys. Like, lots of companies run them, and many companies, either the leaders make assumptions about what they think the questions say, or they don't do anything. And so this is where it goes. It's not about, it's not about just running, the instrument. Those surveys just give you questions. So as a leader, it's, run the survey. Any instrument can help. I mean, we have a bias towards ours, of course, but any instrument, the key is run it, then start asking questions about what it's telling you instead of making, I've been in meetings with clients where they'll get the engagement survey and they're like, oh yeah, I totally know what's going on in that team. Do you? Let's go ask them, right? I think a lot of times people make assumptions or take no action, and that's where these things actually, that's why a lot of times companies will have 30 or 40% response rates, because people are just like, nothing's going to happen.
Yeah, that's an eye-opening answer. And do you think organizations, rather than going behind, we have to increase engagement, you have to really look into the reasons behind the disengagement of their employees? Is that what you're, focusing on? Is that the gist of your answer?
Yeah, I think the big thing with engagement is that you improve it by focusing on other things. So you can't focus on engagement, right? So you think about that quintessential question of, when I wake up in the morning, I feel like going to work.
Yeah.
So what if you don't? What if someone on your team doesn't? What are you going to do? Are you going to come to your house in the morning and break in and be there when you wake up to tell you how amazing your day is going to be? So first of all, that'd be super creepy. And second of all, it's not going to scale very well as a program. So I think that the big thing is that what we've seen is that alignment is the number one thing. So having people aligned, knowing what they need to do, knowing how their work connects to the goals of the organization, that is foundational. And the other thing that really comes through for us, the number one question in our survey, and this blew me away, the number one thing in our survey that ties performance to engagement in a predictive way is people being involved in the planning process. I did not expect that to happen, but it made sense once I saw it. And so understanding how people's work connects to the goals of the organization, being involved in planning, and then ultimately having a good experience in their performance review, where it comes back around and there's no surprises. They're assessed on exactly what they're supposed to be assessed on. Those are the things that drive engagement. Now, the other one that was really interesting was, how a lot of times companies will have values and principles on their website, but no one in the company knows what they are. There might be a brochure at reception, right? They don't use them for anything. One of the other things that was one of the top factors in driving engagement was, my manager lives the values and principles of the organization. So don't just talk the talk, show me. And so these are the things that drive engagement, and they're things that we can do. Now, what we're finding right now, as a little sneak peek, is that they also drive psychological safety. They correlate it, but to an extent that they're kind of the same thing. It's not just a simple correlation of, oh, these things are related. It's the correlations are so high from the early data that these things are the same. Performance, psychological safety, work engagement, the way we measure it, they're the same thing.
Okay, so an employee engagement is more of, it's more related to the emotions of a human being. So keeping that in mind, how much do you think technology can help in improving the experience of an employee? Do you think the new age HR tech, softwares can help in driving engagement and improving experience?
I do. I think there's a few ways. I mean, the first thing is to make it, easy to collect data. That's the biggest thing. We've created a survey that takes 5 minutes to fill out. So in 5 minutes, you can run a full engagement survey, whereas I've used other instruments in the past that take a long time. So I think technology can make things faster, both the technology of the system as well as just the technology of how we're asking questions. The other thing is that it can remove, I've used a number of different platforms that are super painful to use, and I've used other ones that are very easy to use. So if it's easy for an employee to do administrative stuff, that typically falls in the category of someone's job that they're not super thrilled about, right? You going to travel to see clients, great. Coming back and doing an expense report, not so much, right? So I think, I think the technology done in a way where it's focused on the user experience is definitely can help, I think, with engagement. And then the other thing is there are ways, there's a partner we have called Thought Exchange, which is like a crowdsourcing tool. And that tool helps us get to the heart very quickly using technology of what exactly might be going on in an area of collaboration or alignment where people have a lower score. So we can use that to pinpoint very quickly what it is. And so instead of having, the classic kind of session where you're in a boardroom, there's Post-it notes everywhere. It takes like hours, and then someone's going to sit down at the end and like collect all, everyone's terrible handwriting, at least my terrible handwriting. You get through that super quick, and you spend the rest of the session on, all right, what do we need to do? And you get, again, back to our model, you want to get employees involved in this. So many companies and so many people like Coach, they go in and like, all right, we got to engage people. So this is what we're going to do. And they've never asked the people, right? So wouldn't it be great if we had a panel of people where we could use technology to quickly assess what would help motivate them? All right, our employees are that exact focus group. I mean, I find it amazing that in this environment right now, very few companies have done any kind of formal data gathering with employees. So we've never been in this environment. It's a very challenging time. A whole bunch of people are working at home all of a sudden. Some like it, a lot don't. And I think I saw this Mercer study where fewer than 14% of companies had done any formal data gathering. And so to me, that's super concerning because we don't know the experience that people are having. And when you see how performance is tied to things like psychological safety, in this environment, we have to gather employee data. And so that's what we work with our clients to get that data. And so again, I think technology in an environment where everyone's distributed really becomes super important, right? In terms of being able to collect this information and do the things we need to do while everyone's spread out all over the place.
Yeah, that's a great answer. We need to involve people, and there has to be that fine balance for it. So with the increase in the millennial workforce, we have almost 70% of the workforce is millennials. So the gig economy is gaining momentum, and the gig workers are everywhere. It's not just the small jobs anymore, and more executives wants to work for like 6 months and take a break, and the gig economy is rising so much. So how do you think this is going to fit in the organizational setup that we have right now? And with the current situation, the financial crisis coming up, do you think it is here to stay?
So the gig economy is something that I think was created by the fact that a couple of years ago I saw the stat that 40% of the American economy was on contract. So we've kind of, as companies, shown people that they need to be more self-reliant, shown them that they're going to have to be on contract. And I think that there's a whole other group of people between things like Airbnb or Fiverr or Uber. There are people that have that as their main income. So it's like the hustle. And for other people, it's a side hustle. Mm-hmm. And so I think right now more people have to go down this path, especially because, millions of people have lost their jobs. We don't know when this is going to end. We don't know how long this is going to be. And so it's super challenging for people. And so there are lots, people are doing creative things to try to make an income. Now, not everyone is going to be coming back to work right away. So yes, I believe that the gig economy is definitely something that's here to stay. And again, it'll be some people's hustle. It'll be some people's side hustle. I think what I'm fascinated about is I'd like to do some research on this, in the future. Yeah. And look at what is employee engagement in the gig economy. Like that'd be a really cool thing to look at. So that's something. I've many ideas to research. That's one of them. It's like, how does gig economy engagement? So again, if you don't look at it as I'm likely to stay at the company, these other sorts of things, and you look at it on how's the person doing themselves, it'd be really interesting to look at what is the employee engagement level for the gig economy.
Yeah, that's a very fresh perspective to look at, and I think the stats there are going to be really interesting because. How do you measure that with a person who is not staying long enough in an organization? So I think that's very interesting, and I think the emotional aspect of it will be really interesting to look at.
Mm-hmm. So, yeah, I think so. Yeah.
So Jeff, kind of to wrap up the interview, if you have any last sound bites that you would like to leave our audience.
Well, I think the biggest thing, thanks again for having me on. I think the biggest thing that we're trying to help people understand is that things like work engagement, psychological safety, performance, these really big things that appear to be in separate buckets. It's like, oh, okay, we got to focus on psychological safety, or we got to focus on achieving goals. They're all related. And it's really great news for leaders, because if we can focus on the things we need to know, the things we know we need to do, but in a very specific data-driven way, we can help teams align, help them collaborate, help people grow. And we've shown that you'll achieve more goals, which most, the CFOs and operational side of the house are very focused on. But also some of these quote unquote softer skills come right with it. So performance, engagement, psychological safety, they all go together. And so I think this is great news for leaders, because we've had, it really focuses our attention. So I spent lots of time in my career where it's like, oh, I got these like 10 things I need to do. And it turns out they're all related. So you actually don't have 10 things, you have like 1 or 2 things.
Yeah.
And so that's the thing we focus on with leaders. And the other cool thing in our, within the supporting lines framework is that all of the questions are interrelated. So when we debrief with clients, everything's interrelated. So it actually doesn't matter which of the 32 questions they focus on. You can have comfort to let employees be part of the process. And so first of all, they'll know what really is important to them. But the other thing is that since everything's connected, it doesn't matter if you focus on alignment, collaboration, or growth, you're going to get benefits across the company and across all these measures. So yeah, I mean, I like I said, this research is just over a year old. And we're super, super excited about, what we've already learned with it. And, we're in the middle of a study right now, and there's a free survey we have on our website. It's a comprehensive survey that'll measure everything I've talked about. It's free and there's no limits. Like a 10,000 person company can run it if they want to. So it's on supportinglines.com. It's called a comprehensive survey. And that study right now is really cementing our research around how does psychological safety relate to performance. But we're not coming at it from psychological safety to performance like all other research is done. We're looking at what's the relationship from performance to psychological safety. And so I think, that'll be some research we can share with you. And I think we're going to have some really exciting insights there.
Yeah, I think definitely after your research is done, we have to have another season. Another part 2 for the same interview. So
let's
they can share it with us. Yeah. Thank you so much.
Let's do it.
Yeah, we have to do that. And it was an immense pleasure to have you on our interview today. And it was a very enriching experience for me. And I'm very sure it will be for our audience also. Thank you for, coming to our interview and sharing your views on a lot of things and opening our eyes to a lot of things that we never think about. So thank you so much, and have a healthy and safe time ahead of you.
Okay. Thanks so much for having me. And I hope everyone, I keep saying everybody, be well, stay safe. And, we're in this together, and I think we'll make it through, but it's going to be an interesting year ahead.
Yeah.
Thanks again for having me.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.